Hello to our New Era family and friends. We are back again for another incredible week of our Jesus and Justice conversations. If you haven't joined us, our pastor, Pastor Clarence is going through a series right now titled Jesus and Justice. And so right now we are incredibly excited for this panel who is with us right now. So Dr. Joe is going to lead us out again today just to share with us who is with us this evening. And Dr. Joe, we're in your hands.
All right. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be with you once again for these Jesus and Justice conversations. I'm so excited to have these panelists with us this evening, to have this conversation that we're about to jump into and to really dig deep into what this means for us. Last week, we had a fantastic conversation with the millennials and our Gen Zers as we talked about Jesus and justice. They helped us to define Black Lives Matter. They talked about structural racism and even the idea, or they pushed us to think about this question of all Black Lives Matter as even a more compelling and comprehensive term that we need to use. They pushed us to think about the role of policy change, both in and outside of the church. And they felt that there was a clear connection between Jesus and justice, as we have been discussing it with Pastor and even this week with Pastor Jeff's sermons. But they said that Jesus and justice could not just be something that we talk about, but it must be something that we do. We are committed to continuing this conversation about Jesus and justice have always moved together. Jesus and Black religion, justice and Black religion have always kind of operated together. And so while these pandemics of COVID-19 and racial injustice have created new obstacles, we are sitting with some folks tonight that have experienced crisis and eruptions before. And we want to ask, or I want to ask you, how has your faith sustained you? How have you adapted your spiritual practice? And what can we learn from the millennials, and what is necessary from you to share as we move forward? I was drawn back to the Kerner report of 1968. And when we were asked, it says, our nation is moving towards two societies, one Black and one white, separate and unequal. That report in 1968 still resounds today. And so even as we look through time to the Rodney King riots of 1992, where there were the first physical representations of police brutality, to the racial inequalities laid bare by September 11th and Katrina and Ferguson, we are still here praising, praying, and believing. And we want to ask you all, what sustains you, but also what troubles you? How can we have a creative and redemptive conversation about how we can use our faith in Jesus to move us closer to that beloved society, closer to that place where we all want to be living in? And so I'm so excited that we have our Gen Xers and our baby boomers, right? Who I'm calling, and as I talked to them earlier, the children and the grandchildren of the civil rights generation. Some of y'all marched or were close to marching. Some of y'all heard about the marches. Some of us were marching in other things. But I am so excited that you all are here because we are inviting a dynamic group of folks that are thinking about and are really struggling with this question. As I was thinking about tonight, I was thought about the passage in 1 Corinthians 9. It says, so I run with purpose in every step. I'm not just shadow boxing, but I'm disciplining my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified, right? I think of y'all as y'all running the marathon. Y'all been running this race for some years. And so what I hope that we can have as a discussion today is what we've learned during this race, how we've been shaped by this long legacy of fighting for racial justice. These crises that we face are not new, but they've come in a new form and they've erupted in different ways. And so I want to ask us and push us to think about how we can respond and how we can really move together around the rubric of justice and Jesus to transform our church and our larger society. So I thank you all for joining. I thank the folks that are out in Facebook land and on Zoom and everywhere else who are listening. We hope to have a great conversation tonight. And I just want to introduce this dynamite panel. I told them before we went live that I wasn't going to do long introductions because we have a large panel and I want to give them all a chance to chime in, all a chance to join in this really important conversation. And so the way that I'm going to introduce them very quickly this evening is just letting you know how long they've been a part of our church community. That does not tell their whole story, and I'm sure that they will tell more of their story as we talk this evening. But just a little bit about how long they've been involved in our church community and how they're going to kind of carry us tonight through this conversation. So I want to just start with the way that I'm seeing them on the screen. I know you all might be seeing them a little bit differently, but at the top of my screen, I have my brother, Dr. Wesley Poitras, who has been with New Era or associated with the ministry for around 16 years. And so we want to welcome him to this conversation. He is a thinker and an activist, and so we're excited to have him join us. I also have at the top of my screen, Brother Clarence Abernathy. Thank you for joining us this evening. He has been a part of the ministry of New Era for 8 years, has been involved in a number of different things. We've worked together in mentoring, and so again, thank you, brother, for joining us this evening. Next on my Brady Bunch box, I got Brother James Taylor, who has been a part of the ministry. He told me for 7 years, he and his wife, his work that he's done with prison ministries and a lot of other things. And we're so thankful that you are joining us this evening for this very important conversation. My sister in the middle of my screen, Christina Wilkerson, thank you for joining us. She's been a part of the ministry for 11 years. She's worked with my daughter with the dance ministry and with the children's church and other ministries. And so we thank you again for joining us this evening and this important work. Bridget Collier, next on the screen, has been involved with New Era for about 8 years. And every time I drop off my little baby to Sunday school, I see her on certain Sundays or when we were all meeting in person. So thank you for joining us. The leader of our Sunday school, you got to give a big up to Anita Gaylord, who has been a part. She is our senior person on our call tonight. 28 years as a part of New Era, been keeping us in check and keeping us on time for many years. And so we thank you for joining the conversation and coming in. In the middle at the bottom, I have Brother Sherman, who has been involved with the ministry in a number of ways for 10 years. We thank you for joining us and for the words that you're going to bring us tonight. And so I wanted to just bring everybody in. There might be one other person that joins us, and I will introduce her when she checks in. But we want to thank you all for coming in. We want to thank you that we know that this is a rough time for folks, that people have been ill, that people have lost jobs, that we have not been able to come together as a community. So I do not take this lightly, that you are devoting your time and energy for this very important conversation that we're going to have about Jesus and justice. And just like I started my conversation last week with the millennials, I want to start with you all. And I just want to do a quick run through everyone that's on the call tonight and ask you all, how are you feeling in this current season, right? As we were scrolling through our newspapers, even this week, we saw the attempted lynching of a brother right outside of Bloomington, right? How are you feeling this week as we think about Jesus and justice? Are you feeling, hopeful? If you can give me a 5 and say that you're feeling hopeful that you can see a way out of this, or if you are deeply concerned and constrained by the conditions that you're seeing, on that 1. So between a 1 and a 5, how are you feeling, as it relates to what's going on in this world, both of the pandemics that we're facing right now? So I'll start up with, Brother Wesley, if you can just tell us how you're feeling. How are folks feeling right now?
Well, I'll be brief and just say I am at a 3.
Okay.
I'm right there in the middle.
Right there in the middle.
And I'll get to that more when we get farther in.
All right, I appreciate that. So yeah, let's roll through. All right, Brother Wesley, you had a 3. Clarence, come on. How are you feeling today, my brother?
I feel I'm about at a 3 right now. And let me back up just for a second. Thank you all so much for having me and having the panel. I mean, I'm excited about being here. You were saying something about being somewhat tired on our earlier call that we were talking about. Man, I don't feel tired at all. I'm energized. That's where I am right now. Awesome. Thank you.
James.
I'm at a 2.5. I'm kind of like Brother Wesley here. We got a long way to go, but we've made some progress. But I'm looking to see some things change.
Okay. So. All right. I appreciate that. Christina.
I would say that I'm at a 3 as well.
Okay. All right. At a 3, we got a lot of folks in the middle. Bridget, where you at, my sister?
I'm at a 2 right now.
Yeah. It's real. And I mean, I think that like we gotta be real. This is one of the places that we can be safe and honest. I hope that this is one of those places tonight and for the next couple of weeks. Anita, Sister Anita, where are you right now?
I'm at a 4. I'm beyond the middle, but I'm not deeply hopeful. But I do have a sense of hopefulness. So I'm going to go with 4.
Okay. All right. And Brother Sherman, how are you feeling? Wrap it up for us for a second for this first question.
I feel like I'm a 4 as well. Definitely hopeful with the young people involvement, the diversity of Christians involved in the movement for social justice is something that I hadn't experienced. So that is about hope, more hope for me.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I appreciate that so much. I mean, I think that average or that median or that, I don't know, my math skills, the mode, something like that is around a 3. And I think that's real, right? It is a real sense of uneasiness that we find ourselves in right now, that on one side of this equation, we have that faith and we have that hope, but on the other side, we are seeing the unrelenting attack, right? This unrelenting assault. And I want to just jump into this first question because I want to ask, for those of us, for many of you all, as I said in the intro, you are the babies and the grandbabies of the civil rights, generation. You've heard or experienced or participated in these marches. You've participated in these protests. This is not new. This is not your first time witnessing Black bodies and Black institutions and Black communities come under attack, right? You've seen it. You've experienced it. Some of you were the first to integrate your jobs or to be a part of, particular movements in your neighborhoods and communities. And I want to start off with, how have you persevered and overcome in the face of these relentless attacks on the Black community? Like, what has sustained you? What sustained you then, and maybe what sustains you now? So I want to start off. I'm going to start off with Anita and Wesley. I'm going to ask you all to start off with this question, and then other folks, I want you to chime in if you're feeling moved by this question. But how have you persevered and overcome in the face of these attacks? This ain't new. This ain't, how have you made it? How have you sustained yourself?
So I have to make a confession. So I grew up here in Indianapolis, Indiana. I lived in the suburbs. My father was the first Black manager of a bank in Indianapolis. And I didn't participate in the marches. I didn't protest. I did learn to have an advocacy spirit. That is very much a part of me. But when I think back on it, my folks were very protective, and therefore they were participating in the civil rights in Indianapolis, but they sheltered their children from it. And I learned more about the civil rights movement and how it impacted us as a Black community when I went to Fisk University. Because it's in the South. There were people there from many, many communities that actually did march, lost family members, and participated in the protests. And so I think I learned more about it as an older person. So I have to admit that I didn't participate in it, but going to an HBCU helped, I think, give me the advocacy and the justice spirit that I carry on right now. I didn't have to do it. I was sheltered from it in Indianapolis, but I still was able to adapt and adopt what happened to others and could apply it to my life. And it came on, later on, not when I was too young, so I think I've persevered primarily because I have that advocacy spirit. I participate in policy changes. I participate in city council and county councils and the legislature, and I try to get others to participate as well. So even though I didn't have that personal experience, and I am a baby boomer, I still was able to pick up on the advocacy spirit and understand what it is that I need to do.
Thank you. Wesley.
Okay, as a baby boomer, I have to be frank. I too grew up in a period. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. So my sister, my oldest sister, was one of those little kids that got their fire hoses and the dogs released on them. So, and I was younger because I'm the youngest of 11. So for me, and when I never went to school with white kids, everything in my world was black. And if you saw the movie Woodlawn, that was the integration of my high school. I went to Woodlawn. I went to that high school. So my sister was in that class that integrated that school. So for us, my world has been black and white. I never had white teachers or even went to school with blacks until high school. And we never saw each other outside of 3 o'clock. We saw each other from 8 to 3. Outside of that, we was back to our segregated communities. So, but what really has helped me persevere and sustain my hope is hope, and the faith that I've always believed. I always knew that there was a God and there was a Jesus, and that was perfect for me, because what I've seen and what I've experienced growing up in Birmingham, I can't, if I told you some of the stuff, you just probably wouldn't believe, you know, so for me, that has been the essential point is having hope. And I want to make it clear that my 3 is not a hopeless 3. It's my 3 is a hopeful 3, not a hopeless 3. So I'm in the middle, but I want to see how we pivot, because it's going to be how we pivot and how we deal with what's going to be thrown at us. And that's what has sustained me, really, my faith in my family, my community. And that is really what has sustained me.
All right. I want other people, anybody else who wants to jump into that. How have you been sustained? Because I mean, we've seen, I listed those things that we've gone through in the last 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, this is not new. How have we sustained? How have you sustained and persevered in the face that, like, in 2020, we're still dealing with the same things, that the Kerner report of 1968 is still giving us the same truth? Like, how do we persevere? How are we sustained? What do other people want to jump in? James.
Let me chime in. I was born and raised in Gary. We were politically starved back then in the 70s, and we're still politically starved today. The steel mills left, jobs left, the whites left, everybody left us for dead. The school system as of today, it has crumbled based on everything that has transpired over the past 15 to 20 years. They have 1 high school left in Gary to have 7. Growing up in Gary, I'm from a family where my mom had 9 sisters and brothers. And my uncles and aunts, they pretty much took care of us. But in every family, you have those family members that are on drugs, that are in prison, that are in jail. But there's one thing that sustained my family, and that was our faith in God. We all went to the same church for over 30 years or 40 years, and our schools. So let me make this real clear. That when everything else failed, our schools were the beacon of light for us, because we knew that we can go to school where there were teachers that cared for us every single day, and they gave us hope to get out of there. So we have actors, actresses, lawyers, doctors all over the country that came from Lake County, that one segregated place in the state of Indiana where funding doesn't go to. And that's real. So
that's real.
We sustain by keeping hope alive and by going back to the community that we grew up in and giving back unconditional. So that's how I've sustained over the years.
Right. So I hear education, I hear faith, I hear, Anita, you were talking about advocacy and that continued kind of community kind of engagement that goes along. Anybody else, any other things before we jump to the next question about what sustains you in the face of this? This is not new. Clarence, are you coming in?
I was going to say just briefly. So I was born in Union, South Carolina, but I was raised in Dayton, Ohio. So my parents came from the South and have continuously explained to me when I was coming up what type of situation existed in the South. So that was always a challenge. But recognizing kind of all the things that have transpired over the years, the thing that sustains me, I think obviously it goes back to faith in God, that belief that God will take care of all situations. You mentioned education. Yeah. And really, from my perspective, we don't have a choice. I mean, it's not like there's a choice. With the opposite side of this is we give up. And we come from a people that do not give up. We found a way out of no way from the beginning of time, and we continue to do that. So my ancestors paid the price for me that I might be where I am. And from my perspective, it's my responsibility. And as you know, I mentor. It's my responsibility to reach back and then to bring up those who are coming behind us, and then to have them to reach as well. And that has to be a full circle. It has to be a circle that we all participate in. And that's where I find my hope. Thanks.
No, I appreciate that. I want to keep pushing on this, because this question of of hope, of faith, of education, of mentoring, I think that at some level, when I hear that, everybody in the room shakes their head and says yes. That makes sense. That's what we do. That's how we pull together. But we also are in a moment where a lot of the things that you all named are in short supply for some of our younger generations, right? They feel like education systems have been completely gutted, right? Going back to James, they feel like some of the mentoring and the connections with family are no longer there. They feel like that even the church is no longer speaking to their particular needs or questions. How do we revive this, if you will, right? I want us to think about, this is what sustains you then, but how do we pull this into the current moment? Brother Clarence, you were talking a little bit about this. We gotta keep mentoring, but what does it look like for us to kind of move this persevering spirit? Y'all have been running for a long time. How do we give that running, persevering spirit to the next generation, if you will?
Can I add something, Brother Joesph? Is that what I shared this with Pastor Moore, I think probably he remembers it, I'm sure, about 12 years ago. And I used to bring students of mine to the church. I think one of the challenges that because I've tried to my wife and I have tried to counter it with our kids, is to, because, and everyone can share if they agree, in the sense that one of the challenges that Pastor asked me one day, I said, Pastor, what we've done is we've removed struggle from our kids' lives. Because we had to struggle, and we removed it, and we did it compassionately, because none of us want our kids to go through what we've endured and what we had to go through. So by removing that struggle, we've reached the point where our kids, when they hit that wall and they can't pivot and deal with, so what my wife and I do, we talk to our kids about those things that they're going to encounter. And everyone doesn't have those conversations with their kids. And so struggle is a good component, because once you remove struggle, that's the fight in us. That's always been, that's in our DNA.
I love that pivot that you brought up there, because that takes us to a question that I had shared with you, and I want to pull this out. And Bridget, I'm going to start with you on this, pull you in and pull some other folks in. Sherman, I talked about in one of the questions, I said parenting and grandparenting in our community is understood as a radical act of love and service. Like to parent and love our children, to have that talk with your daughter or your son about what it means to be pulled over by the police, or to maybe be stopped, or to affirm their Black beauty in a world that is not like affirming it. That's courageous in our world. And I want to ask, I'm gonna start with you, Bridget, and then I can move over to Sherman. I want to think about, how has your role as a parent, as a grandparent, as a mentor changed during this current moment, right? And what ways are you loving, teaching, and protecting your young children during these times? Jump in for me.
Okay, so I agree with Brother Wesley 1,000,000%. It's totally about educating our children and about the struggle. Although it's hard to understand something if you've never been through it. I'm different from you guys because I wasn't raised here in my family. My dad did not grow up here. So he moved here in 79. And it's amazing how little he knows. And speaking to my peers, I'm just shocked how little they know about the civil rights movement. And it's sickening to me that I learned about it in law school from a little Jewish lady. You know, it's sickening. They don't teach our history in schools, and I think a lot of us, including myself, with my firstborn, I expected it to be taught. Whatever the kids needed to know was taught in school. So I didn't feel like, oh, let me go find out what else I need to teach my children as far as our history. And it wasn't until, again, law school that I learned about the civil rights movement. I started reading on my own and just started to understand how hard it's been for Black people in America. And I was raised, when I was in Haiti, I was Black people all day, every day. And I moved to America, and it was in Lexington, Kentucky, mostly all whites. So, but for the most part, school was good. I had good, people were good to me. It wasn't until, it's funny, I think I'm saying all this just to bring a point of where my children are. I had no idea what was going on around me. And in college, 3 of my white friends told me that I was being discriminated against by a potential employer. I had no idea. These 3 white girls came and said, Bridget, they asked you everything. They asked you to provide all this information and proof of this, proof of my writing, and they didn't ask them anything. And they're like, you have a higher score than all of us. So, and then I started noticing things as I was older, but you are taught to work hard and focus and you'll get there. And yes, it happened, but it hasn't been easy. So with my children, I think I went with the same, mindset, work hard and don't put your head down, don't cause any trouble. And it hasn't worked, so my daughter really doesn't understand the struggle. With our son, he's a young Black male, who looks like a man already, only 13. We started having the conversation with him a little bit, I think about 9 years old, and he didn't have an understanding for it. He didn't understand really what it is, but now he's living it. So he's getting a better understanding, although, and it bothers me that he's not around Black people, and it's our fault because we wanted the best for him. We wanted the schools, and that's still part of the struggle. In doing that, we tend to erase and ignore a lot of what's going on, including the history. So now we have to kind of stop and teach him something he knows it doesn't see. And and where we live, definitely predominantly white, typically, and I've never experienced blatant racism as I have had here. And 2 of the gentlemen that attacked the young man in Bloomington lives literally a few miles from me, if that far. So it's scary, you know, but I believe that educating our children as much as we can and let them be part of this. So for our son, as scared as I am, we're going to DC and we're going to march. Schedule didn't allow us to do a lot of it here, but I feel like that's the only way for me, that I can help with the solution. Because even though all of his friends are white, if he has an understanding of what's going on, he can have that conversation with him. So when we found out about George Floyd, he's playing games with his friends, and we said, well, what are your friends saying about this? So he had conversations with them about it. And we heard some of it, and a lot of it was, let's agree to disagree. But to me, I hope that gave him a perspective of the people he surrounds himself with, and not to be afraid to speak your truth and who you are. Because for me, my goal with Blake is to teach him, you need to understand who you are as a male, as a Black male, as an American, and you also need to be proud of that. And I teach him, you need to fight for what's right, even if it's gonna cause you whatever. Think about all the people who lost their lives, their jobs, for us to be able to do some of the stuff we do now. So, and for me, for me now, more so is when I feel like I have to take on that baton and figure out how I can best help make this world a better place for everyone, not just, my son, brown kids, everyone. And education is the key for me. And it needs to come from our home, because they're not teaching our kids at school. It's our churches and it's our home. And we have to learn it for ourselves in order to pass it on to our kids. Sorry, I'm so long-winded, but I'm passionate about this situation.
No. I appreciate that. I want to go to Sherman. I mean, I think that you're saying, like, we got to educate from home. Like, that's a radical act of love and service that parents and grandparents have had to do, and how it's changed during this moment in many ways. I mean, because that's very different than Wesley, where he was in the crucible of Black teachers and Black principals, and, who for a long time were teaching and educating. And then you moved into this integrated space. For many of our kids and our grandkids, they've never known a Black principal, even though we're living in an era where we're supposed to be the most integrated, the most evolved, and they have all white female teachers, and they have all, and so that's a very interesting kind of moment that we find ourselves in. Sherman, and then Christina, did you want to jump in too? Sherman, jump in, and then we'll move on. Yeah,
just quickly, like Brother Wesley, up into 4th grade, I grew up in, all my classmates was Black, and I thank God that I had that experience, because I mean, the smartest, the not so smartest, the cutest, the dumbest, the ugly, the whole spectrum was covered. So I had that vision of who we are as a people, and then we moved into integrated schools, and then that concerned me as a parent. I'm blessed to have 2 daughters, and I was like, man, they don't see that. They see how a system labels our kids, and if you don't understand how racism and oppression affects it, then we take on some of these same white supremacist beliefs. So I thought it was like critical that I pointed out with my daughters, and they say I overdo it, but then sometimes when I wondered if they was getting it at all. But then with this movement here, man, they're scaring me really. I'm like, whoa, hold up, I don't know if I want you to go down there. And it's encouraging, but then it's like, hey, I mean, I don't know if I want my daughters down. I mean, both of them are bit IU with the Monroe County thing. I was like, it's. I said I was for, but it's also frightening seeing people with arms, with guns, marching against people, peaceful protests. So as a parent, that makes me a little bit frightened. But I believe that as a parent, as an educator, that for us toward Black youth, we have to inform them how this oppressive, racist society work in order for them to have the juice, the agency to go and want to change it.
No, I hear you. Christina?
I would say in my experience, because I don't have any children and or grandchildren, for me, it goes back to education and the system as a whole, and starting from the fundamentals of young children.
Yeah.
So, and I totally agree with what Bridget said about how it starts at home. I'm of the belief that parents are their child's first teacher. So it's a teacher in a school building, it's their responsibility to educate on this level. But prior to that young child, that 3-year-old, that 2-year-old going into an educational institution, you have to provide them with the fundamentals of who you are. You were created in God's image, and God loves you, and I do too, and you are great. You are going to be great, and you will be great. And I know that because God made you in such a way. In addition to that, I need you to know, first and foremost, when you go out there, you're Black. When you come back home, you're Black. So I want you to know that as a Black person, either myself or your grandparents or your great-grandparents or some great aunt, cousin way down the road did A, B, and C so you can be at that school. And so that you have the opportunities available to you. And if opportunities are not just going to be given to you. So I want you to have an understanding that you may have to struggle, but in doing that, you're going to be great at your struggle, because again, you were made in God's image, and you're great. You have great things. You have great potential, because I taught you in such a way to know that and to do that. So I think it starts at the very basics, from the beginning a child starts their journey of life. I really do.
I want to pivot, because I think that, like, I love these responses, that you're saying that on one level it starts at the very beginning. It starts in the schools. Sherman, you were talking about how you were already activating your daughters, and maybe you activated them a little bit too much. But it also means that, that we start with that, but it also means that we then need to push them out to do the work, right? And what we've seen, and we have a question already on Facebook, people want me to ask y'all, they're saying, what do the Gen Xers and the baby boomers think about the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Because a lot of these movements have been where our kids, you were talking about going to DC, Bridget, or, sending your kids out when they're in college for, Wesley, what do y'all think about it? And what does freedom or liberation mean for you all, right? Because I want to ask y'all that, right? We have Black Lives Matter out who are saying freedom looks a certain way. And then in many ways, that's been disconnected from the church. They said the church didn't do it for us. The civil rights movement and the hierarchical structure didn't do it for us, right? So they said we had to create our own thing, right? So what do you all think about the Black Lives Matter movement? First of all, let's start there. I want some people to jump in and give us some responses there. But then I want to ask you all, what does freedom and liberation really mean for the Black community, right? What does that look like when we're talking about we want freedom, right? When yesterday, if all of y'all were on the Facebook and Twitter, it was the blackout day, right? We're supposed to be buying Black and supporting Black businesses and don't support anybody, and we had these signs painted across the street in DC and other municipalities saying Black Lives Matter. We got the NBA now approving that folks can wear that, Black Lives Matter on their jerseys when the season restarts, right? So first of all, what do y'all think about Black Lives Matter? And then secondly, what does freedom mean? I see Anita, your hand was up, and then who else wants to come in? Go ahead, Anita.
So I am prepared as a baby boomer to support the millennials. I am prepared. I'm one of those who would tell a kid or, a young adult, I changed your diapers. Don't tell me what to do. I'm out of that space right now. I'm ready for them to take the lead. I am ready to be told where to be, what to say, and how to do it. I think it's their time, this generation, and it's my time to be as supportive and as positive as I possibly can. So Black Lives Matters means to me that I am going to support this movement. I'm gonna stay healthy. I'm gonna do and provide for them whatever they need, and be supportive in the physical, in the mental, in the psychological, every way I possibly can, because I am ready to follow this generation and the little kids even into some change. We haven't been able, we didn't do it all the way. And so I see myself in a supportive position, and I see myself, they may see me as a leader, but I see myself having them share with me what it is that they want done and how they want it done, and then I am prepared to do that. And liberation for me and for them, it's going to be the change that we've been looking for, the change that they desire.
I'm supposed to be on it, but he didn't want us. He didn't want me.
And the change that I believe that it's going to happen. It may take us longer. Policy change is not an easy thing to do, but I remember Pastor said it's kind of the perfect storm. We got Barack Obama as a president, so we saw what was possible. When he won that presidency, my girlfriend called me and we cried because our parents were alive when a black man became president. Then we got a bad king, I say. We got not what we wanted, but we got what we got. And then we got the pandemic and all of these things, and then the police brutality, all of these things. I think God is so in control of what's happening now to get us up, get us moving, get us acting, get somebody like me following these younger people so that we can actually make a change that's gonna really make a difference. Yeah. I haven't raised any children of my own, but I've mentored and I've influenced. I think I have a lot of motherly instincts, and I am prepared to support those children, those young adults as they move forward. I'm ready to go. I am a little tired. I'm a little tired than you, Brother Burnett. I am a little tired, but I'm not too tired. So I'm ready to go.
I'm gonna raise my hand.
I see James, and then we're gonna go back over to Bridget, and then I know Dr. Alicia Sanders is logging in, and so we'll introduce her in a moment, but she'll listen in as we're answering this question. So James, and then Bridget.
I'll be quick. For you baby boomers and Gen X people, the revolution will not be televised, the revolution will not be televised, the revolution will not be televised. And it was televised. These millennials televised the heck out of everything. They knew nothing about Gil Scott-Heron and what he said back in the day. Yeah. So now here's the part that won't be televised. What we have to do behind the scenes as Gen X people and as baby boomers to support them from a policy perspective. Yeah. We are still fighting the battles behind the scenes, whether it's on a macro level, politically, legislatively. We have to do that work for them. So we're not tired of fighting. We're going to keep fighting. And I think if they're out there on the front end, we can be on the back end to support them.
Yeah. All right. I hear you, Bridget.
I think the Black Lives Matter is just phenomenal. I feel like, first, nothing is new under the sun. Fashion, but nothing. And what these kids are doing, even though I don't know if many of them realize it, young people are basically the same thing that happened back in the civil rights movement. I mean, I've seen young girls getting beaten. I mean, no longer the fire hose, but there's dogs, there's police with batons, and it's unreal. It's basically looking at history again. So I applaud them and they are very determined young people because they are out there knowing things could happen, they would get hurt or whatever. And I agree with all of you guys. We have to be there to support them in whatever means necessary. Policy, fighting behind the scenes because they're fighting on the front line financially, spiritually, in every way that matter, because this fight will not be won by just one group doing whatever. It's going to take us being more involved in our communities, as much as we may not like it, giving up some of our time to be involved in some boards that are not like what we want to be involved in. And so we can have a say. At the end of the day, the reason why my score was a 2 is because I believe change happens within, in your home and within. And right now there's so much hate. And until we can, it's an individual thing. We can do policies as much as we want to. Not much will change if their hearts are not love and accepting and appreciating who we are as creations of God, basically. God created all of us, no matter what color you are. So I think it's possible. I believe anything's possible with God, but I feel like that there's so much more work to be done than just policy and writing laws, and definitely have to vote. But we got to vote for the right people, you know, and I'm not a politician. I decided to put that, not to think about this a long time ago, but there's so much we could be doing. You don't have to be a politician to see change happen. You basically can tell the politicians what to do. So yes, we have to support it. I love it. I think we have to keep this momentum going. We can't let it die. We have to keep on pushing, keep safe, vote.
Yeah. Yeah, I love these responses, because I want to even push for you guys, push a little bit deeper on this, because one of the things that I'm seeing from some of the questions and comments that are coming in that I'm reading is that some people are saying, what is the difference between Black Lives Matter, maybe as an historical kind of movement, or an organization, versus Black Lives Matter as kind of now a groundswell of an ideology and a philosophy that a lot of people are connecting to, right? There was an organization that emerged, right, that was run and led by a group of 3 African-American women, or Afro-Latino, Afro-descended women, that started up after the uprisings around Trayvon Martin and the uprisings in Ferguson. And then that has now evolved into, if you will, into what some of us would call a larger discussion of like Black Lives Matter as a way for us to signal a particular kind of idea. And I think that would be the same thing that we might connect to, SNCC, or to, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was a organization, but the larger movement was civil rights. Everybody was saying we want to be free. Everybody was saying we got to do something about our conditions, even if you didn't agree with SNCC, or even if you didn't agree with the Nation of Islam, or whoever the organization was at that time. There's a shared identity that's coming out. But I want to push again too, is that yeah, we're excited about this notion that people are able to articulate Black Lives Matter, but what does that look like? What does freedom mean in relationship to economics, education, and politics? What does freedom mean in relationship to our faith and church community? How would you all define this? Like, how do we know when we've achieved this, right? We out there saying, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. We're changing the texture of our hair back to our natural conditions. We're doing all of these kinds of things, but what will it look like? How will we know when we've achieved this, that we've gotten to a place that's better than where we are now? What does that look like for folks?
I have got to get in on this. Can you hear
go
me?
ahead. Yes, I can. Go ahead.
I'm just itching over here on this one. Thank you so much. So let me say this about Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
I look at this twofold. When you had Martin Luther King and we had Malcolm X. Yeah. Malcolm X said, by any means necessary. That's what I'm picking up from the millennials right now. By any means necessary, this is going to happen. Enough is enough is enough. And they've had it with it. So I'm on board as it relates to that. One of the powerful things about what's happening right now is that this is a worldwide movement. We haven't really talked about that at all, but it's a worldwide movement. In the past, it was kind of centralized to America and what we were experiencing specifically as African Americans. The world has seen what has happened to our people, and they're answering the mail. They're answering the mail. They're here. The next thing that I wanted to mention is that economics matter, people. Economics matter. I get a little disappointed sometimes with some of the dialogues, because I believe the blueprint has always been here. We don't need a new blueprint. We know what needs to be done. We just need to execute against the blueprint that has already been established. And that's one of those things that we have to become engaged in. And really push ourselves to support one another. Let's cut to the chase. We historically had an issue with a crab mentality. Let me just be candid. We have, in the past, as African Americans, we have not supported one another. We talk about what we want to do and how successful we want to be and how we love the brother and we love the sister. But how much have we supported our own culture and being successful. You talk about Black Wall Street in Oklahoma. You know, one segment, think about that for a moment. If we just took one segment of our community and said, we're gonna create a model and a blueprint. This is what we're gonna do. In this area, we're gonna have doctors, lawyers, grocery stores, all those things that we have historically failed at in the more impoverished communities. So, and we talk a little bit about parenting. Of course, you know, I mentor. So when you talk about the IPS system, you're not talking about the other systems that we as privileged Negroes have become accustomed to, okay? In the IPS system, some of the things that we're talking about is not working, and something needs to be radically done differently. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, if you talk about an African-American female that's raising her kids, she has not been raised properly. So you talk about the parent trying to teach, the parent has not been taught. But we have a vicious circle that's there that we really, maybe some individual, and I'm a college graduate as well, you know, that's good. And oftentimes I say that I'm really happy about the education that I received. I have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's degree, but the best education I ever received was on the ghetto streets of Dayton, Ohio. So that gives you some street smart. So while we talk about all the sort of the perfectional things that could happen, we do have to rewind and sort of look at specifically where we at. We're in 2020, right?
Yep.
So put on your 2020 eyes and have perfect vision and think about specifically what's happening in our school systems. And the brothers mentioned, and I'll shut up in a minute, the brothers mentioned, you know, the African-American teachers. That's what I had as well. That was always the solid piece for all of us, I think, that we had those mothers and fathers. And now, as you mentioned, Doc, we basically have white females that are running IPS schools. Oh, and then one more point. Let me talk about the police officers for just a moment, and I'll be done. So with our police officers, we have no African-American officers generally that are from the neighborhoods policing the neighborhoods. So you're talking about someone from Whitestown who does not look anything like us, had never been engaged with us in any way, shape, or manner, other than watching Good Times on TV or some other Black program that has programmed their mind, that are policing us based on the premises that I'm a Black man, so I must be aggressive. I once had an interview, and at the end of the interview, was interesting. 3 white males interviewed me. Their response after the interview was that I was too aggressive. I wondered in my mind, if I had been a white boy, if they would have said that I was assertive, a twist on words. If I would have been assertive, if I was a white guy versus aggressive as a Black guy. I'm sorry, I get a little fired up when it comes to this. But that's what I toss over to you, Doc.
I mean, no, I appreciate it. I want to, Alicia, I want to welcome Dr. Alicia Sanders to the group. Everybody say hello to Alicia out in Facebook land and everywhere else. I want to bring you in, Alicia. I'm going to bring you in right now, and then I'm going to go over to Brother Sherman right after you, because I want to make sure that we have a chance to hear from you. We're talking about what freedom means. And I think, and you know, Brother Abernathy just was talking about this kind of scarcity model that we often feel like there's not enough to go around. We feel like we got to be close to something else to be good, right? You know, if you close or near whiteness, that makes you better maybe. But what do you think freedom means, or how do we really preach or teach about freedom to one another, to our children, to the larger church community? What do you think? How are you going to think about what freedom means for us, or what it should look like as we move forward? And I'm gonna get to Brother Sherman right after you.
Yeah. I think freedom in being a parent is being able to talk freely about what matters most. So right now, race is mattering, religion is mattering, and just our overall stance in how we feel. There are lots of countries where you can't speak out the way we speak out here. So I think even though, you know, we don't have as many rights as we, as Black people, as we, I think, need or demand, we still have lots more freedoms than many countries have. So I think being able to speak freely about the needs of our community, to our children, to the next generations, I think that's what encompasses freedom. Just being able to be free in your speech, being able to be free in your beliefs, and being able to influence our next generation in helping mold them into being positive, free beings, basically.
Yeah. I'll ask you this. I mean, do you feel free though, in the current moment that we find ourselves, to be able to say what you need to say at work, at church, in the world that you operate in? Do you feel free, and what do we need to do to get there though? I mean, because that's the other question. I know that we're better off, but how do we get to the next step, if you will? Like, how do we get to that next level? And then Sherman, I know I got you on. What do you think?
Do I truly feel free? No. Yeah. But that's with so many hats that I've been blessed to wear. In doctoring, I cannot be truly free. I have to censor most things that I say because there is, in some form or fashion, it can come back to bite me. So, I mean, I do have to be censored in that regard. In my my community, I don't know if I'm truly free there, because I don't want to put things in a way where I'm viewed as condescending because I have this medical degree. You know, I have to try to seem like I'm on, you know, even ground, which I am. I'm just another person. I just have some extra degrees. And so, no, do I feel truly free there? No. In my school environment, with my children, when they go to a Christian school, you know, I feel like, we can be very liberal and free with our beliefs about Jesus, yes, but then do I feel fully free because I'm coming from a Black perspective versus your white perspective? No. So, I mean, that is a very good point that you're making. Do I truly feel free? No, but I do my best in the freedoms that I have created to enforce that or help our children understand what their rights are and help them understand the freedoms that they have at this point.
Yeah, no, I thank you. I mean, and we're gonna bring everybody back in. I know, Brother Sherman, you're next up. I know you want to kind of jump into this because I have a follow up too to this question as well, and I want to bring back in Wesley and Anita. But Brother Sherman, what are you thinking?
I'll be quick on it. First of all, the Black Lives Matter. These young people, man, I couldn't be more proud. And honestly, that's why I'm on the 4. I tell cats down when guys in my age go, I said, man, we the last hope. These young folks, man, they don't even realize what we're dealing with. I was so wrong. I mean, I was so wrong. They proved that, hey, they stood up and they're asking for systemic change. So I couldn't be more proud. To the liberation of the freedom, I think that's a very interesting question. I think it ties back into, though, I mean, when our ancestors, Emancipation Proclamation, through the 13th Amendment, manumitted from slavery, we started schools. We demanded public education, and we said we wanted to develop leaders that would lead us to freedom and equality. I mean, that is so powerful. People that just recently freed from slavery said they're going to start schools to lead us to freedom and equality. So what that freedom is elusive. What does that mean? But to me, it means, hey, I see myself. Somebody's talking, we're created in God's image. I see myself created in God's image, but I see these brothers and sisters on here created in God's image. But what about these people I'm just walking down the street? When I see them in God's image, or do I see them as white supremacy has presented them? Because then I'm not free. I'm enslaved in my own mind right now because this is how I've been taught to see myself or whatnot. And how do we measure it, I would say, I believe stupidity, geniusness, talent, all ugly, everything is equally distributed among people, races. And so when we look at statistics on employment and unemployment, on death and birth, on business ownership, when those are equally distributed upon race and gender,
sexuality identity, then we'll say, hey, we're moving toward, if not at a liberated state.
No, I appreciate. I think I heard someone say that if we can't predict via race and class where someone is going to end up any longer, then we've moved to a place where we're getting closer to freedom. Because right now, all of us on this call could have predicted that COVID-19 was going to impact Black and brown folks at a higher rate than other communities, right? Because of the moment that we live in. Lack of access to healthcare, lack of access to education, lack of concern for Black bodies, right? We didn't need any degrees to predict that, we know that because of this long history that's gone on. But that's the question I want to jump to, and I'm gonna go to Wesley. I'm gonna go to you first. One of the questions from Facebook that people have been asking right now is, so what's the role of politics, right? Many of you on this call, myself included, we grew up in the moment where education and politics, right? And I mean, Bridget, you pointed to this a minute too, were like seen as the way to make your kind of plea, right? That the politicians would come to the church on Sunday, we would give the pulpit over to them, whether they were white or Black or something else, right? Politics was seen as the way to do that, right? And then we also saw white allies as a space to build some level of community that hopefully that they would join us as we transformed our society. So I want to throw out to y'all, what is the role of politicians, at this particular moment in history? How do we get politicians to either be sensitive to the issues that we're talking about? Do we operate outside of them in some way? What role do they play? And then also, what role do what role should they play right now? Pastor started this Jesus and Justice conversation with the conversation with the white pastor from Connection Point Church, right? Y'all, you remember that a couple of weeks ago. Like, what role are we supposed to have with our white brothers and sisters, either in Christ or politicians or just your colleague at work? What role do they play? So I want to throw that out. What is the role of politics, and what are the role of some of our allies? I know that Brother Sherman, you have to drop off, and we thank you for your insight and your comments. We're going to continue this conversation for another 20 or so minutes, but please, brother, we appreciate you, and we'll keep you posted. Have a good evening, man. But we'll start with Brother Wesley, and then we'll jump back in. I don't know if Bridget, you wanted to come back in or not, but allies and politics. What are we supposed to do? We got Joe Biden coming. What are we supposed to do with politics right now? I'm asking the baby boomers and the Gen Xers. We put a lot of trust in those folks. Come on.
Well, for me, I have a daughter who just graduated from college, did well, moved into DC. She loves politics. She interned in the Senate and all of that. Now, I have a respect for politicians, and I have a disrespect for politicians. More so because of what you said with regard to because politics has been, I could easily do politics and do well, but I don't like cesspools. I don't like the contamination. And because if you look back at history, particularly with African-American politicians, many of them who have gotten, like John Conyers. I had a student I put an intern with John Conyers. The longest sitting congressman the longest sitting congressman ever. But his whole career was thrown basically in the toilet because he felt that he could do what white boys can do. He could be open and walk around in his office in his underwear with white women working for him. But white men, politicians, who have actually, Packwood, who have groped his employees, literally groped them, not allegedly, has done it, and walked away with pensions. So I look at everything from the lens of race. Coming from Birmingham, Alabama, everything for me is about race. Now, race is not real, but racism is. We all know that race is a man-made construct, but racism is real. And I think politicians, we have to actually get to the point where what Frederick Douglass said. Frederick Douglass says, power concedes nothing without demand. And we have to demand what we've been trying to demand over the years and over the years. And with the Black Lives Matter piece, I think I'm proud of that generation. I'm proud of them. They fit right into the politics and working with the politics. However, but I still think they have to have a healthy respect for those senior politicians who are trying to do the correct thing. Maxine Waters, I will follow anywhere. Because she has stood her ground and been consistent and have not wavered. Now, some have wavered. Some have really compromised themselves. And I just don't think that we're at the stage where we can, we have to actually decide. I'll finish and wrap up with this. We have to decide and get beyond the point where I nearly put about a couple of my nephews out of my house during Christmas when the elections were happening because they didn't vote. They literally did not vote because they didn't like Hillary Clinton. And for me, that was an issue of you have to get in tune with your chauvinism because you cannot handle a woman being in lead. And that's what, for me, was the challenge. And I think as a Black man, that's the toughest thing because we got the right to vote before white women even got the right to vote.
That's right.
Even though they didn't let us vote, even though the Klan came at us and everything else, but we got the right to vote before even white. And we have, through the Christian component, because these are the individuals that are following, I call him 45. I don't say his name because names are power. I don't speak his name. 45 has garnered enough African-American evangelicals to follow him. Because they cannot handle women being in charge. And we have to own up to that. We as Black men who are comfortable with our position and comfortable with strong African-American women or women in general, we have to actually be the ones that put those brothers in check because they aren't going to listen to women.
No, I hear you. I think that's so powerful.
I'll stop there and let someone else share.
What I was going to say is to remind us that all politics is local. It's all local. And that's what I've been trying to say to the young people. You know, it's right now, the example right now is your school boards, your elected school board members are making decisions right now about whether these schools are going to open or not. And if they are, how it's going to happen. And we elected them to that school board. So, you know, I think we sometimes forget that, you know, we need to know who our city county councilor is. We need to know who our state representative is. We need to know who our senators are because they're making the decisions that really have an immediate impact on our lives and on our children's lives. And that's what I just reminded everybody, all politics is local. We have to get involved in it. I like policy, and I do believe when you can pass policies that cast the net far enough to impact a lot of people, it does make a difference. But you got to be serious about it and you got to work hard at it because it doesn't happen overnight. But when the net is cast far enough, it starts to really create change. And for me, it's downtown Indianapolis at that State House for the change that's going to have, an impact on us and our children right away. So all politics is local, and vote. You're right. I mean, it's just like, my nieces and nephews thought I was nuts. They're in college. They're in Westerville, Ohio in college. I'm talking to the Westerville, Ohio post office at 6 o'clock in the morning, getting their absentee ballot to them because where they lived was above a theater and the substitute mailman couldn't find the mailbox. And so what that did, though, what that translated into was them calling me saying, when do I get my absentee ballot this year? Because it was important for them to understand that, that voting was the number one thing that they needed to do. So, yeah, you should have kicked the boys out for not voting. And women have always made the world go round. I mean, you just got to face it. Women have always made the world go round.
Let me say this. People were pissed off when Frederick Douglass walked into the White House to visit Abe Lincoln. It wasn't a visit. Abe Lincoln had open sessions where anybody could come in. And my man Frederick walked in there and said, "Hey, I need to talk to you." And Abe said, "Hey, I know you." And we have to appeal to the intellect of the politicians. Abe knew him because Abe knew of his work. The same thing happened many years later with Booker T. Washington. When Teddy said, "I'm going to invite this man to the White House," people were pissed off, okay? However, he was the second Black man to grace the halls of the White House and the executive suites that Black people built, okay? We built that joint. So with that being said, we knew back in the day that we had to, for our people, appeal to the intellect of the politicians. Simple as that.
I mean, I want to push that though, but I want to get to two questions. One, if anybody else wants to jump in. One is, we got to appeal to them, and I agree with everything that you all have said. We got to vote. We got to appeal to their intellects. We've got to hold them accountable. But what does that look like? And should we be doing it differently as the Black church? I mean, in many ways, have we really held our local politicians accountable when we've allowed them to grace our pulpits and to come in and talk to a captive audience on Sunday morning? I'm gonna go to Alicia, and then and then to Bridget, and then I want to ask, after you answer that, Alicia, have we held them accountable? And then I want to ask him for us to think about as a group, what are also we saying to our white Christian allies right now? Like we talking about politicians, right? White or Black, how do we hold them accountable? But then also, how are we holding our white Christian allies, if there are any, or what we're defining as them? How are we holding them accountable? Like, what do we mean by allies? Are white Christians our allies? And what should we be requiring of them to prove their allyship? All right, should we open up our pulpits on Sunday? Alicia, you go with that.
Yeah, so that has always rubbed me a little weird when the candidates come in, say they're like 2-second piece, "I'm here, wave," and then, bounce. I'm like, what did you just do? How did that make any difference? So, I mean, COVID has been pretty good, I guess, in that regard, because 2 weeks ago, when Pastor sat down with the pastor of Connection Point, I was like, oh, this was genius. Let me see what you guys are talking about. Let's have an actual dialogue. So although it might be a bit daunting, it will likely be required for these candidates that really say they're going to make a change in our communities and really going to work for our communities to actually talk to us, talk with us, have a dialogue about what they want to do and what we feel like we need. Not, I am mayor such and such and I'm going to be in this district and thanks, that's always rubbed me the wrong way. So I think having a true candid conversation, maybe not in the pulpit on Sunday, because I still want my real message, but maybe on a Wednesday night or some other night of the week where we can just have an open dialogue about what our true issues are and what you feel like you can do as the candidate to represent us on the ballot.
I agree with you guys 100%. For me, being in my profession, I've learned really what politicians are about. And politicians are kind of like, I guess if that's the best way I can describe it, kind of like someone with a key to a door that you need to get in. And our white allies, I think you need both. And to any extent, I think we need both of them, because they are the one with more weight, as much as it is fact that they can get to that door open and tell the politician, hey, open that key, or help us tell the politician, open that key. Because the people don't become politicians to get rich. It's connection, it's relationship. Those relationships are what gives you a contract to build this road, or to build this building, or to run, to do different things for the government. They're the most reliable. So that's what politicians do. They basically hold the key to resources. And our white allies, we need them to help us to get that door open. And I think we need to hold them accountable. I don't care what big company is saying or whatever. My thing is, show me your actions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in your pocket. I don't want you to hire me because I'm a Black female. That would be, that's disrespectful to me. Hire me because I qualify. Stop looking at my name and wondering, oh, is this is a Black person, we're going to bypass their name or and such and such. So be fair, be respectful, be honest. Look at me for who I am on paper or who I am by how I present myself to you. So long story, to keep it short, we need both our white allies and our politicians together to get things done, as well as I do have an issue when politicians come to the pulpit. They don't say anything. And as much as I don't like to hear it, but I feel like we just vote because they show up and they don't say anything to us. So when you have those allies, both white allies and as well as the politicians, we have to demand something. Somebody else said, if we have no demand, there's nothing they can do for us. What do we want? And when do we want it? And how quickly do we? Because if you are involved, and even campaigns, you're involved in campaigns, you're going to get a job somewhere. And the other thing about local is so important. Your sheriffs, your school council people, all of that matters, and we don't teach our kids, nor do we know. Most people don't even know who their superintendent is. I mean, I know mine, I'm because we in organizations together, but most of us don't know who run our kids' daily life. Our kids spend more time at school than they do at home.
That's right.
And we don't even connecting, relationships with our sheriffs, our police departments. They should be able to, we should demand, because we are paying them to come in, have conversations with our, if it's in a church, that's something my husband's been talking to for our local ones, and they're willing to come, most of them, to have conversations, to hear what our needs are and our fears, of course. So we have to have demands. And until we have that, we can holler and scream all we want to, and we can plan and talk about what we want. Talk about whatever, but we need to have plans, and we need to know who to go to execute those plans.
Yeah. I love this, because I think that's part of what we're seeing in the current moment, right? We've seen people say, we're going to defund the police, or we're going to reprioritize budgeting, kind of models. We're going to get rid of statutes. Like these are things that we're asking for. We're going to ask for you to organize your hiring and your promotion, your models more clearly or more transparently, so that we can know why or how we can articulate that. I want to also push, though, I was pushing at politicians, and we were talking about white allies. I want to move a little bit over. I want to push a little bit and say, what about white Christians? What are we asking of them right now, right? If our brothers and sisters from Connection Point are watching, this Zoom conversation right now. We talked to millennials last week. We're saying we're doing a whole series on Jesus and justice, that when we talk about Jesus, we're talking about justice. When we're thinking about justice, we're connecting it to our Christian faith walk. What are we asking of our white brothers and sisters, or are we letting them off the hook? Are we thinking that they don't have anything to say? What are we saying to that right now in this moment? Politicians, yes. Co-workers and Target and Starbucks, yeah. We know we kind of have, but what are we asking of white Christians? What do people jump in? Who wants to answer that right now? All right, Alicia, and then Brother Clarence, I'm gonna bring you back in, and then I want to ask again after we finish this. I'm gonna ask this right now. We're holding everybody out to the standard. What are we asking of the Black church too? Because I want to ask, how does the Black church need to pivot, change, or be transformed if we're going to really argue that at the center of our Christian witness is a call for justice and liberation? How do we need to look differently if that's the case? But first of all, let's start with our white Christians and what we should be asking of them in this particular moment. Sister Alicia.
Yes, one of the main things that we've been asking of our white Christian friends is to not be silent. Jesus turned over tables when he saw there was some badness going on in the temple. Do not be silent. Call out your friends that are not doing Christian things. If they themselves are calling themselves Christian and you know that they are not acting Jesus-like, don't be silent, because silent is complacency. And you are just condoning their actions if you continue to remain silent when we need you to speak up. We don't have access to some of the people that they have access to. So if you, being an ally, being a Christian, being a white Christian, you can be a bridge. You can be a person that can help the people that we don't have access to see and perhaps change some of their ideologies, change some of their actions. I think that's the main thing that we've been impressing upon our white Christian friends, who they truly are friends. Just don't be silent. Don't be complacent. Please speak out and just operate in the love of Jesus.
Yeah. Silence is consent. Like if you are silent, you are consenting to white supremacy. You're consenting to the institution or the system that's in place. Anybody else want to respond to that, brother Clarence, or anybody else want about what should we be saying to our white brothers and sisters? I mean, I know Brother James too. You see them when you're doing prison ministry, and you're like, all these folks are saying we're committed to liberation. We're committed to our, all Black kids getting an equal education. But then when we call them to the carpet, what does that need to look like, right? At the end of the day.
I think what I say to them is that you need to be vulnerable.
Okay.
You need to be vulnerable. You need to, I always say, there's a different thing when someone sees you naked. You need to be naked. You need to be transparent. You need to be, because I don't have an option or a choice. My children don't have an option or a choice. They will experience this, whether you like it or not. Your kids they get to bypass this. And if you're willing to become vulnerable, because it takes a lot to truly stand up to friends, relatives, because I've had students who have come back from my class, my race and ethnicity class, and they've challenged their parents on their racism. And it takes a lot, to challenge your grandparents and your parents on their racism and their views. Because I've had students who have said, my parents told me I can't date a Black man. Never date a Black man. And so I want to know, what does that mean? And these are Christian students. This is at a Christian institution, and they profess to Jesus. And my question is, okay, so what Jesus are you professing to? Because are we all Christians? So become vulnerable as an ally.
Not be silent, become vulnerable. Clarence, I heard you trying to come in.
I would just pretty much echo what everyone else was saying. I think it's about having candid conversations with individuals within the church and outside of the church, as far as that's concerned. The reality is that really has to come from the heart. It literally does have to come from the heart. We're going to always have racism in this world, and we know that we are. But our white Christians and our white brothers, I think, can support us, and we can support them by at least having an exchange and acknowledging who we are and digging a little deeper. I mean, not just sort of looking at it from the surface. I think a lot of times what we do, even as African Americans, we see someone one time, and in our mind, we come up with this perception. This is who this person is. And we never give them an opportunity to articulate who they are, and then to see through the depths of them what they can do, who they are, and how they can make a change.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, Anita, I'm gonna pull you right in. I wanted to just point in one point from Facebook that we're getting a comment that connects to this, is that one of the things that we saw with 45 is that he took that Bible. Do y'all remember this, a couple of months ago? He took that Bible, he walked across the street with the National Guard right behind him, and he stood in front of that church and he suggested that his brand of Christianity and his brand of patriotism and white supremacy, that they all cohered, right? That they all lined up evenly and nicely together. And I do think part of what we're asking is, how do we disentangle those two things, right? Because for a long part of our history, white supremacy and Christianity, or patriotism and Christianity, have moved together, right? And so so Anita, I'm going to call you in on that, but I want us to think about how we also have to be more prophetic, I think, in our preaching and teaching, in order to encourage and to really empower our white brothers and sisters to know what is at the heart of the gospel. But yes, Sister Anita, go ahead.
As I talked about our session today with my Christian friend, I'm going to ask the question that she asked me. How many of y'all have been to Connection Point? So and of course I had to say, well, I haven't been there either. So I mean, and the point is that, and it's kind of what Brother Abernathy said, and that is that, it's time for us to get together. I mean, we need to go over there. We need to have that conversation that Pastor had with more of the allied Christians who are at Connection Point, so they can, get to know us, meet us. And I know some of you know some of the Connection Point folk, but now we're in a different time. We're in a different place where, it just may be something we want to think about as a next step, something really solid, tangible. And it gets to the question that you're asking. And I thank my friend Endora for saying that. She said, well, have you been to Connection Point? And I said, no, I haven't been there. And I did listen to the dialogue, which was rich. But now I think pastors connected with their pastor, but now it maybe some of us need to start to try to make that, no pun intended, connection as well. Something to think about.
No, I hear you. I mean, but I want us to think about who we are as, New Era, who we are as African-American Christians. We're holding everybody else accountable right now, right? In this particular moment, we're saying, politicians, you got to do better. We're saying white allies, you got to step up. We're saying 45 and his homies, y'all got to move out of the way if y'all ain't going to act right, right? We're holding, what do we need to do, right? I think, Anita, you're kind of gesturing in that direction. I want to bring Christina back in. What do we need to do as a church? How does our church embody liberation and justice? How are we teaching our kids that Jesus and justice kind of move together? Because a lot of our kids, we might ask them, they say, what's Jesus about? They might say, well, it's communion or it's baptism. Do they even connect Jesus to this language of justice and freedom in the way that we're trying to articulate tonight, or that these last few weeks we've been trying to articulate? What do we need to do differently at our church, right? New Era, and we can call it the Black church or whatever, but our church, what do we need to do differently as we try to make it clearer to our congregation and our community that Jesus and justice are always tethered together? Start us off, Christina.
I think it goes with, you have to be willing to take a risk. So I've heard consistently while we've been here about education, about politics, about voting. We as a church, whether it's individual, whether it's collectively, we have to identify, and even if it's you as your individual self, what is your gift and what is your lane, and you need to get in that lane and you need to take a risk and go at it. For example, we have Operation More Hope. Well, we've been experiencing COVID, so we've not physically been able to be there with those children. So what kind of risk are we taking so we can continue to sow into those children with them being absent? Because Operation More Hope serves two purposes. Those individuals who volunteer, be it like teaching them, engaging them, or just giving them food, they are seeing the light of Jesus Christ. So that they might say, you know what, I like this Jesus. I want more of him, so I'm going to give my life to him. But at the same time, we are providing those students with seeds so that they can be better in their educational setting. And so we are stepping outside of our four walls to do that. So you have to take a risk, and you have to be willing to be naked, like you said, Dr.
Yeah.
Porthos. You have to do something different. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to be uncomfortable. If that means we go to Connection Point as an individual and we emulate that same program with Connection Point and be vulnerable and expose ourselves so that we're teaching those people, those young people, what the light of Jesus Christ looks like, but also sowing seeds of education, because I would imagine there are individuals within that church community that are below the poverty line who have concerns about food security. The grandmother who's like, I got this sick child who has asthma, and every time I turn around, the school's calling me because they need their inhaler. So things like that. We have to take a risk. We have to learn that we need to be uncomfortable and start taking risk.
Yeah, I like that a lot. This idea that we have, like, if we're gonna be a church that is tending and ministering to the Samaritans, that's tending and ministering to those who are on the other side, that are thinking about those who are not like us, who are saying, "I will see you two in paradise." You know, as Pastor Jeff was saying this Sunday to the thief on the other side of the cross. We like that's risky behavior, right? We're not just taking care of ourselves, right? Because for a long time, you know, certain Black churches were about a place where folks could come dressed up, look nice, talk about Jesus, and go back home, right? This risk of faith that you're talking about, Christina, is what I think I talked about this during the millennial conversation. It's costly, right? It means we've got to make some real sacrifices in terms of our own well-being, and things of that nature. I mean, you think about, Brother Wesley, you talking about this with women in leadership, maybe how we think about that is another costly kind of activity that we got to bring into the narrative. I know we're running short on time. What I want to ask one or two other people to talk about what are other things that the church needs to do if we're going to really make this connection between Jesus and justice clear to our members and to our community. But then I want to end up, I'm going to ask everybody, we're going to do a quick lightning round to close out for everyone. And I wanted to ask everyone, what are I asked the millennials or, new books or texts that they were reading. I want to ask you all, are there any classic books or texts or movies or shows or things that we should go back to, that we need to return to, that we've kind of forgotten about a little bit, but that these are important as we think about liberation. These are important as we think about freedom. These are important as we think about building a real Jesus community amongst us all. So I'm gonna open up for one or two more people to talk about anything that we need to change at home. What do we need to do as a church, right? Christina, you talked about taking risk of faith and the way that we do that. I received that. Anybody else? Other things that we need to do? Yeah, Sister Alicia.
I was talking to my aunt. She actually lived in Tulsa, and I had no idea that, about the Tulsa massacre until my 20s. And then I didn't even think to ask her until like last month, what did they learn about the Tulsa massacre? She said they went to the church that they rebuilt after it was burned down. Like, I'm like, what in the world? But one of the things that she said that helped them in restoration after that period of time was having prominent activists, people who were on the front lines, in the midst of it, getting their hands dirty and bringing them to the church to not only tell them what was happening on a ground level, but how they could get involved. And I don't know the last time, we've had any activists or anyone coming to the church to tell us, what do we need to do at this grassroots level? What do we need to do to help build up our community and help, get out there and get our hands dirty too? So I know she said that was one of the things that helped them grow. It still isn't back to where it was before, but just having people that were, doing the work in the community, right there in the forefront, come in, tell them how things are going, what they need more help with. Christina's right. We're doing great with Operation More Hope. I love it. That's what we're doing with our local community, with our children. But where else? How else can we make a difference? And who from the community, the Black Caucus, the NAACP local chapter, who from the community can we bring in that can help guide us in how we can be more more beneficial, more how we can reach more parts of our community and get our hands dirty as well.
I love that, because a lot of times we're okay with the politician and we don't agree with all the things they bring in. We let them come in and have the pulpit. Why not let the activists? We don't have to be completely 100% aligned with everything they believe to say you are doing something that we value in the community, and we need to learn from you and to glean from you and support parts of what you're doing if we can, and move forward. James, I see you up there, and then you're gonna be James and Bridget, and then we'll move to the lightning round and we'll close out for the evening. I really thank everyone out there who's been listening. I appreciate you all here in the Zoom for giving us of your time and your energy and your intellect tonight. James and then Bridget. I think you're muted, James. James, you're muted.
We know the names. We know the names of the people that work in our youth ministry.
Yeah,
they are held up in high standards, because at Northside New Era, we believe in boosting our kids up. We believe in putting our kids in the forefront. More Hope, that's a nationwide program that's received notoriety across the country. Now, here's what I'm going to say. The white churches, the white Christians are experiencing some of the same problems that we have in getting kids in the church, okay? So you teach college classes, Dr. Joe. You teach college classes also, Brother Wesley. So I also teach college classes. My classes consist of mostly white women, okay? If you surveyed your classes, and your class is mostly religion, 30 people in each class every semester. Out of 30 students, at least 20 of those students are atheists, white, amoral. So we're talking about this new millennial generation of white so-called Christians. They're having big time trouble getting their kids on the same page. So that presents a problem for the future, okay? So the Black church, we have to work extra hard to make sure that we're giving our kids what they need so that they don't end up in a position like Trump walking across that street with the Bible. We don't want that, because remember back in the day, white people used to justify the Bible and what they were doing through the Bible. God would tell me to whip you. God ain't telling you to whip me, okay? So that's not how we interpret the Bible. So what I'm saying, you got a group of young people who are going to school to be social workers and who are going to school to be teachers. Who are amoral. Leading our kids every day. I asked 12 kids today who are fellows for the prosecutor's office from all of the high schools throughout the city, North Central, Warren Township, and none of them wanted to grow up to be a teacher. None of them. So who's teaching and who's going to teach our kids? If the church isn't doing it, and if the schools aren't doing it, our people just aren't there.
I hear you. Bridget?
In regards to our church, I echo what Dr. Sanders and Christina was saying. I'm not going to repeat any of it, but I will add that back to education, and I think you both touch on that in your own way. And what your aunt said is one of the stuff I was thinking in my head. We have to be the central location. We have to be open to receiving any and everyone, and to listen to everyone, not just doctors and lawyers and business owners, just because you don't know what gift God has put into this person. And we also have to be a resource. I know we do a lot of different ministries, but resource of information. Again, I'm just echoing what Dr. Sanders said. Bring in whoever, the politicians, the educators, the different organizations. Have them provide information. Have us ask questions. If Wednesday is not a good time because of schedules, do it after church and see, because more people will stay on a Sunday, because I know I will after church. And just find ways to educate people, provide information to them. Eventually, we might start small, but people will share with their friends and they will start showing up. And then you might find, by sharing that information, other people who's willing to do something that they may have not thought about doing, or other ideas coming from it. But I do believe it starts with educating our people. If it's every month, creating an agenda, this is what we're going to focus on. this month,
Yeah.
and then bring in speakers that way. So, but yes.
No, I mean, I love that. I mean, I think that we, the Facebook is lighting up right now. We don't, with, other congregations who are saying right now, I want to talk to these panelists, like, white congregations and white Christians who are saying, we don't have a question, but we want to continue this conversation. So again, we're beginning this work. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And I understand this as, I really do appreciate y'all, because this is y'all reasonable act of service, your reasonable act of worship. Is like, I know some of y'all might not think about this, but to be here tonight, to talk about how your faith has informed who you are, to commit an hour and a half to talk to the rest of our community, to share about how we're going to push each other and push forward. This is worship. This is our act of service to God and to our community. And I don't want you all to take that lightly, because I do not. And I really appreciate you all being here. I want to close out with the quick lightning round for anything that you think folks who are listening should turn back to, a classic text, a movie, an idea, a concept. I'm going to just go really quickly to all of you, and then TJ is going to close us out. I just want to thank the folks for listening all around. We're going to make the list from last week that the millennials had proposed available, and we'll also make this list of classic text or ideas or movies or music also available. So you guys can just jump in when you're ready, and we'll just go through really quickly. 20 seconds each. Let's go.
Roots.
Ooh, go back and watch. Go back. Go back and watch it. Go back and watch Queen. That's a good one. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Alicia.
As the superintendent of the Sunday school at New Era Church, the Holy Bible.
Oh, she went real classic right there.
The Holy Bible. and attend a class and learn something new.
I feel you. All right, Wesley.
I really recommend an HBO movie called Something the Lord Made.
That's a good one.
Because it really gets at the essence of racism. It's a true story, but it gets at the essence of racism and oppression, however, but it gives hope. It's got Gabrielle Union and Mo Def there. Yeah. It's a great movie. And I wanted to also highlight a book. And I pulled a bunch of my textbooks, but not textbooks, but books. But this one is called A Credible Witness. And it's by Dr. Brenda Salter McNeil. She's been to our church. She's spoken at our church. Mm-hmm. And it's about a credible witness, reflections on power, evangelism, and race. I think what she accomplished with this book is it fits right now. It really touches it now. In another book, and I'll mention it because Brother James talked about it, is that it's called The Unchristian. It covers not just white students, it covers all students and how students are becoming unchristian because they're seeing the hypocrisy that exists in our society by leaders who claim to be Christians.
Right.
And they're pulling away from the church in droves because this generation cannot stand hypocrisy.
Right.
Bridget and Christina.
I had two, just in case.
Okay.
The wonderful Dr. Sanders picked my first choice. My second choice is the book The Warmth of Other Suns.
Yes. Yep.
And it just provide a lot of history about the migration of Black people from the South to northern states and western states. And when you read this book, you learn a lot about things are not that different from the South, from the North and the South and the West. They're pretty much the same for the most part. Yeah. And it covers from the 1915 to 1970s, the different things and tell different stories. It's an amazing book.
It is.
Of Black people migrating from the South to the North and the West in search of a better life and the struggles that they've dealt with. And it talks a lot about housing and I would say white flight, to some extent redlining. It's a lot of history.
Yeah, awesome. Christina.
I have two, an oldie but goodie to me. Spike Lee, Do the Right Thing. And then there's a more recent one with Cuba Gooding Jr. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Life of a King. And Life of a King in modern day speaks more readily regarding, again, going back to education, the young Black male who's not okay with being smart and cool. Yeah. And the main character utilizes chess to teach him about the game of life, and it's really good. I was teary, and it just inspired me that I need to learn how to play chess. But it is really good. It was really good. And then finally, a song, because I like music. Aretha Franklin, Young, Gifted, and Black.
Yes. All right, James.
Well, I go back to Gary Native, Denise Williams, Black Butterfly. Beautiful song back in the day. Yes. And they're bringing that back, you know, just like they brought Chuck D back for the for the award show the other day. Did you all recognize that the BET award show was on CBS? Did you all know that? That's the first time in 40 years that show has been on CBS. That's a milestone for us to be on CBS. But the other thing I want to talk about, Visions for Black Men. We had the privilege of bringing Dr. Naeem Akbar here several times, national psychologist that talks about how to deal with the imagery of and the growing up of Black men. Of course, Jawanza Kunjufu, Dr. Malana Karinga, but what I like to study the most is the great debate that took place between Booker T and W.E.B. Du Bois. Oh, I love it, because you get opposing views. It's kind of like watching, you know, Tavis Smiley and Cornel West and Eric Mike Dyson. These were guys that had that intellect back in the day. And everything that they're saying today, they said it many, 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 many years ago. So any of those books are good books to read. Souls of the Black Men by W.E.B. Du Bois.
Clarence, and then I'll come back to Alicia, yes.
Yes, so I have Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery.
Yep.
Naeem Akbar, PhD.
Yep.
That's a good one. And then my sister Christina mentioned Do the Right Thing. I'd just like to highlight one little portion of Do the Right Thing. Gentleman sitting in Sal's restaurant, the pizza parlor.
Yep.
And there's a bunch of pictures that are on the wall. He said, why ain't no brothers on the wall? Why no brothers on the wall? You know what Sal told him? When you get your own place, you can put whoever you want to put on the wall. That's the message. Do the right thing.
Right. Do the right thing.
Do the right thing. Alicia, did you one last?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot. The 13th Amendment, the documentary on Netflix. Oh man, that was actually very good. I think a lot of people should watch that as well.
Exactly.
Everyone should watch that.
Everyone should watch that.
Yeah. I mean, I want to thank you all so much for joining us this evening, for sharing your time and your energy. I'm gonna call TJ back in just for him to close us out. And I would add, though, I love Why We Can't Wait by Martin Luther King. If you want to go back to a classic Martin Luther King text, Why We Can't Wait, he's dealing with these same kind of issues, these same kind of urges, these same kind of moment at that particular moment in history. It's a beautiful text. It's very quick and easy to read, but it's also so prescient and specific for our moment. TJ.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Joe. Listen, to this panelist, y'all better be careful because Pastor might call on y'all to preach upcoming sermons of his. You guys have been phenomenal. I thank you for giving your night and this evening to be able just to encourage us all to educate, especially us millennials, just about the journey that you guys have taken in this fight for justice. And so once again, to the panelists of Dr. Joe, we thank you for just this awesome dialogue, and we appreciate it greatly for so many people of New Era, and then also those who are wanting to just jump into this dialogue to see what we're talking about as well. One thing that we do want to share Sister Nita, I think you were talking about this earlier. There are congregations who are wanting New Era to join into conversations, who are wanting New Era to come into their churches. And so, listen, that's a privilege for us. You know, that's a privilege for us to be able to share our experiences and our knowledge with individuals who just want to know what Black people are going through. And so we are greatly encouraged by those opportunities, and we definitely are going to take a part of those opportunities. And so thank you for bringing that to our attention. And we're definitely led by Pastor Moore. He's definitely taking advantage of those opportunities. As we get ready to close tonight, you guys got about 3 minutes, 5 minutes before Pastor jumps on to Facebook Live tonight. And so we're going to end this awesome night by some awesome encouragement from our pastor, Pastor Clarence Moore. And so we want to thank him again for this opportunity. We want to thank this panel for this dialogue, Dr. Joe for moderating as always. And we cannot wait to see you in 7 minutes to join Pastor on Facebook. See you guys later.
All right, and I'm supposed to close out with, we thank you for joining us in Wednesday in the Word for these Jesus and Justice Roundtable Conversations. I'm Joesph Tucker Edmonds. We love you and we're praying for you. See you next week.